Hey guys, I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
The men who watch.
If it's on a screen, we're watching it, talking about it, and sharing our thoughts with you guys.
Today we are going to talk about movie theater memories. And our memories of seeing all these movies we talk about on the show and where we saw them.
Yeah, so kind of in a first, we're not talking about a specific movie or types of movies, really just more of the theaters that were the places that these special memories of movies happen. So before
this idea came to us from Rob.
Oh yeah.
He was one that threw this out, and I liked the idea, and I thought it would be fun. You know, some of our stories on our shows we have touched on where we saw something, but I thought we could really get into all the theaters we remember seeing movies at and any funny stories associated with that.
This is one I wish Rob was actually here for, because he's like you. You guys have really good memories about details about what movie we saw at which theater. And unfortunately, I don't have that same photographic memory. I have on a few, but there's sometimes when I'll throw a movie out and I'll go, I remember seeing this movie. I kind of have a general vicinity of where it was and who we saw it with, but I won't remember exactly which theater. But I have a feeling that between you and Rob, I could throw out any movie if we all saw it together and they would be like nailing it. Oh, that was Lewis and Clark back in September of 2001 or something like that. So
it's kind of like in Rent where you said, yeah, we saw the premiere of Judge Dredd in Rent. And I said, no, it was a test screening and you were late. So you and Rob went and saw Casper.
Test screening, premiere, what's the difference? Okay.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Anyway, got the gist. Don't take away, that's one of my stories. Anyway, before we get into it, first got to say a shout out to all you guys watching on YouTube. Thank you for watching us. Please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell so that you'll always be notified when we have future episodes. And for everybody listening on our podcast, thank you for your support. And feel free to send us a message, let us know what you think of the show, and if you have any ideas for what you'd like to hear us talk about in a future episode. So, as we always do on the show, Mike, toss it to you first to get the ball rolling. Where do you want to start with this topic of movie theater memories?
Well, we're going to go back to where I grew up, which is in Selah, Washington. Selah is a suburb, small town of Yakima, Washington. Selah was so small, it had no movie theater, which meant if I wanted to see a movie, I had to go to Yakima. And that also meant if I wanted to see a movie, I had to have someone drive me to the theater because it was too far to bike. So that sucked, because what it meant is I could only see a movie if my parents would take me, or I would ride with a friend and his parents would take us, which somewhat limited my ability to get to the theater. I know in your case, Norb, you guys could bike, just like in E.T., you could just bike through the sky down to South Center. So
we had more options.
I did not have
for
that
sure.
Luxury.
Yeah. We had more options. We had more options and more lenient parents also.
And a sister who was a manager. You had everything, man.
Yeah.
You had it so good.
Oh,
you have no idea.
I'm going to get into all that, all the hookups we had. But yes, let's start with yours. Since you didn't have the hookup, it was probably farther in between.
Well, and let's keep tossing back and forth here, but I'll just, we can work our way down the timeline. But in Yakima, all the movie theaters were owned by one guy. His name was Mike Mercy, and all the theaters were therefore called Mercy Theaters. And he had 3 different locations. He had a location kind of outside near the Valley Mall, and it was called the Mercy Theaters, but it basically had Mercy 1 and Mercy 2. You'd see the sign said Mercy 1 and 2. And you had a central entrance with a huge snack bar, and you went to the left for Theater 1 and the right for Theater 2. So that was really my earliest memories of seeing movies, was at Mercy 1 and 2. Secondly would have been the Uptown Plaza, which was near downtown Yakima. And that was also one theater. So Uptown Plaza. And then I'm not sure when he built the other one, but there was one out called the Cinema West. And that was on the west side of town. And that had 2 screens, if I remember. And the Plaza had 2 screens as well. So he followed a similar routine of having 2 theaters, one on the left, one on the right. And I did meet Mike Mercy at one point in my day, and I'll save that story for a little bit later. But just as a beginning, that was where I saw my first films. And I do have a list of a few, but Norb, why don't you, I'll toss to you just to keep this back and forth. So where your earliest memories start?
Well, I think I have a lot of different theaters, so I'll probably just start with one, and then as I keep going back, I'll talk about memories from another theater. So I would probably start with one of the fondest early memories was watching Star Wars for the first time. Really, actually, I only saw Star Wars once in the theater. So it was my one and only time, because we didn't go to movies more than once when we were kids. That just didn't happen. So we saw that in the UA 150 downtown Seattle. And again, this is 1977. So at that time, most theaters, there was no such thing as the Cineplex. They didn't have the multi-screens. You had to go to, usually one movie playing in one theater, maybe two, I guess, if they had two. But the Star Wars was the only game in town on that one. And I don't remember much about the details of what it was like leading up to going there. We didn't go to Seattle a whole lot often, so this was a special trip to actually go downtown for a movie. But I remember the unique thing about that theater is that what I remember was like the top of it was kind of dome shaped. So I remember looking up and feeling like I was seeing this, like the inside of the Kingdome, where it had this arched ceiling, and it was different. It was different from the other theaters that were typically just more box shaped. And I just remember the anticipation, looking around and the countdown for when it was going to start. And of course, you watch Star Wars and everything, the scrolling titles, the music, everything like that. Didn't realize how much of a life-changing moment it was. I mean, it felt like it because I knew I hadn't seen anything and experienced anything like that before. But I remember driving home, trying to digest everything I just watched. And I remember just the drive home from Seattle back to my house was, it was night at this time, and I remember watching the streetlights go by. And as they flew by, I kept imagining lasers, spaceships. It was just, I couldn't get enough of what I just saw, and yet I wasn't going to be able to see it again. That was the worst part. It's like I saw it once, and I don't know when I'll get to see it again. It's not going to be anywhere. And
that's where I tried to tell kids today, you don't understand.
Yeah, you don't understand.
It only lived in your memory.
That's why looing at the lights flying by I was trying to picture laser beams flying by, because I didn't know when I'd get to see it again. It was just a fleeting moment. But I'll never forget that, going to downtown Seattle to watch that one and only time to see the original Star Wars.
Well, and for me, back at that age, I don't know about you, but to me, the movie theater screen, it was a window. I felt like I was looking through a window at something that was really happening in my very young days. Even when I saw Star Wars, I felt like I was watching something that was real.
Well, and I think also, especially a movie of that kind, because it did win, I think, an Oscar for sound editing. So the sound in that movie was something else. But I remember when you're a kid also, I think your ears are just more sensitive. You haven't heard as many loud things. So I just remember the music and the sound effects seemed really in your face. And I'd seen other movies before, but nothing that had hit on that level. And so every sense was affected, visually, the sound-wise, in a way that had never been before. And so probably from that regard, that theater stands as the one that, it was the highest impact of a movie that changed my perspective on the world. There was life before Star Wars, and now there's life afterwards. But it all started with going to that theater, the UA 150 downtown. United Artists, that's what the UA was for, United Artists 150. I don't know how they were affiliated with United Artists, the film company. Maybe they owned it. I'm not sure how that all worked. But yes, it was a United Artists 150 downtown Seattle. I'll never forget Star Wars for the first time.
I also remember a very distinct memory of the popcorn. And what I remember is, for some reason, it was in the early 80s that Mercy decided, instead of having the tub, he switched over to a big cardboard-shaped beer mug. That's the best I could describe it. It was like a beer mug-looking piece of cardboard big tub that had fold-out handles, like the cheap cardboard fold-out handles. You put 2 fingers in the loops, and you'd carry popcorn like a big mug of corn. But I remember on the side of it, it had little teardrop-shaped butter droppings that were shaped like tears, and all the butter tears had little happy faces on them. So it was like made you feel like you're putting the happy butter on your corn and it's happy, little, everything's a little cartoon character. What I learned later in life, did you know that back then, of course, it's never been real butter. Back then it was palm oil. And if you know anything about what palm oil is, it is really bad for you. Palm oil is really a huge heart-clogging cholesterol type of topping. Tasted good, but nowadays I think they use some kind of soybean oil. I don't know. It's still probably not great for you, but I just remember hearing that back then it was palm oil. And that's the funniest thing about one thing that has not changed, whether it's then or today. They still say, do you want butter on that? Sometimes I want to say, it's not butter. It's not butter.
Right.
But that has been forever. It's always, they call it butter, but it's not butter.
I'm guessing because real butter is too expensive, right?
It's because of the refrigeration too. It's got to be refrigerated. Too much work.
Too much.
We need to make more money off this cheap stuff. We can solve all kinds of problems.
Who cares how unhealthy it is?
Yeah. Who
Make it
cares?
cheap and taste good.
And just make sure you suggestive sell. Do you want butter in that? Do you want to supersize? So. But I just remember the little happy butter tears falling onto the cartoon popcorn on the side of these.
That's the funny thing is that you wish you had like a souvenir cup or something you saved, just to have one so you can kind of look at it and go, I remember this, but you never do. You always throw it away at the end of it. Yet you remember it so much at the time, but then once it's gone, you just sort of forget. And then if you ever see it again in a TV show or some internet YouTube video and catch a glimpse of the old packaging. It's fun to see the old packaging because time goes by, you take it for granted then, but then you see it and it's like, oh my gosh, I remember that. That is so cool.
Well, in Yakima, above every theater entrance, the way they would show you what was playing there, like it'd say Star Wars, it was in, how do you describe it? As those old plasticky letters that you would put up like on billboards.
They literally had to use a little stick and put them up and take them down. I don't know if that's the marquee, but it's the physical, the actual
Is
letters.
that how they did it in Seattle at the time, at the theaters you went to?
I think that was the case for a long time before they finally just had, whatever they used. But yeah, I think it was. And maybe there was the older ones where it was actual 3-dimensional letters. And then there's the kind of just a plastic flat thing that you just sort of slide in there. So there's different kinds of lettering, but I think what you're talking about are the actual physical 3-dimensional cutouts. Yeah, each one's an actual hard letter.
Spell it out with letter pieces.
And if it's a long
thing I remember
title,
too is typical movie theaters today, everything is dark inside. It's dark floor, dark walls. But back then, I remember the curtain. They had curtains along the side that were these ugly, pukey yellow. And sometimes pukey orange, really bad colors. But
we had the colored curtains in our house back in the 70s.
I know about those colors. Yeah, that was the style at the time. So, but my very early memories of the Mercy theaters were seeing movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars. And the Uptown Plaza, I saw Ghostbusters for the first time, and I remember they had Ghostbusters posters all over the front, and tons of people were going to see it. And, a highlight of my later life, Norb, was where you and Rob and me and some of our other roommates, we went to Yakima, and I took you to the plaza, and we saw this movie called Super Cop. Which was a Jackie Chan. And that ended up being one of my happiest memories because I got to take you to the plaza, and it was still the way it was. But that movie itself, it was overdubbed in English, and I don't know why, but I still wonder to this day, why did they keep saying, ha, 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 okay, ha, 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 okay? It was like over and over they say, ha, 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 okay. To this day, why is that the translation?
What's weird is that you'd think, okay, for the people who had to speak Chinese and make them overdubbed, you'd expect the dub to be kind of bad. But the white guys who spoke English were overdubbed, and they look bad too. It's like they overdubbed everything badly. And I don't know if it was on purpose or just because that's kind of the feel. It's kind of a thing, right? When making fun of the bad dubbed Chinese movies. Hey, we're going to kill you. It's kind of a normal thing. So maybe they just wanted to make sure it was all consistent.
Whoever says, ha, 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 okay? Who talks like that? Who says, ha, 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 and then okay?
It's that bad evil guy laugh and then quickly switching gears to the next topic. So they got to make this quick. Okay. Now we don't think. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But,
You did that better than it sounded movie. That movie, though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I didn't dumb it down enough for that. It was.
Yeah, it wasn't that good. So the plaza was there. It was great to be able to take you guys there.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun memory. So it was quite a while ago now. The years have gone by. Yeah. Well, we went back there again a couple years ago, and we saw Ready Player One, but it wasn't the plaza. It was the plaza building, but it'd been all remodeled. Right, so it looked like a new
Cinebar type theater. It wasn't the old school like Super Cop. That's why I was so glad, because I saw Terminator 2 in that theater. I mean, I saw so many movies in that theater, and I didn't know you guys at the time. So it was so fun to be able to go see that movie with you there. That was a big deal to me, and I'm so glad we got to do that.
Yeah. Yep. That was a fun memory to re-explore the old stomping grounds, your old haunts.
Yep.
So speaking of the old haunts, we don't talk about this very much, but this is an old style of movie going that I think is dead today, unless I'm missing on something. But the old drive-in movie theaters. Mm-hmm. Really, my movie going experiences actually go back to the drive-ins first. I think because it's probably cheaper than going to the regular theaters. So we actually went to do that quite a bit with the family. And I remember we had one that was not that far from our house, just kind of down the street, or not down the street, but down into the valley, only a few miles away. And it was called the El Rancho Drive-In. And it's a signature look of drive-ins back there, because they want to make sure that nobody can just watch the movies for free. So they put tall trees around the sides to kind of obscure the view from the outside.
People try to park on the street nearby and catch the screen.
Yeah, get a cheap peep show. But so what I remember about going to those movies was, you go in there, you drive your car in, you pay the thing, and then you'd go find your little parking spot, and then you'd park next to the little speaker, right? Remember, you all had a speaker? And so you'd put the little like CB radio type handle thing hanging on your window, and then you'd go, get snacks at the little concession stand, bring it back to your car. But you'd watch the movie from inside your car. And the picture was it's a big screen because it was like really huge, but unfortunately the picture was really dark half the time because it wasn't a strong projector. So you really couldn't see much. It was always washed out. Sound like crap because it's not Dolby anything. It's Dolby Mono. It's Dolby.
It's anti-Dolby.
Anti-Dolby. So you're getting this little transistor radio quality system. And so the movie going experience is pretty bad. Bad picture, bad sound, but it was still fun to go to the thing anyway. There's something about just going in there and knowing the movie's going to be showing in a few minutes. I just distinctly remember watching Bambi. That was one of the early movies I remember watching with the family. And I just remember being very sad when the mom dies in the movie. So that was one of the older memories, and my memory is much more fuzzier. But then the more recent, probably the last memory I have of a drive-in movie theater experience is when we watched, it was me and my sister, several of her friends, and I think my auntie baby, she's the one I think who drove us down there in our big station wagon. So it was maybe 5 of us, something like that. But we watched a double feature, and that was the thing. I think they're usually double features. It was a double feature of Halloween 2 and The Fun House, and that was in 1981, I believe, or was it 80? Can't remember. Maybe it was 80. But scary movie. Again, I'd just seen Halloween, so literally it was like just almost days after the first Halloween I'd seen on TV, and then went to go see Halloween 2. I was creeped out. We were all screaming in the car and everything, and Funhouse was pretty forgettable. I think it had a clown in there, but the Halloween 2 was definitely scary, even though it was on that cheap little speaker and bad picture. It was still fun to be in a car with a bunch of screaming teenagers or preteens. But that's something, I don't know if there's even drive-in theaters in existence anymore. And that's something I think our kids will never probably ever experience unless somebody brings one back and gives kids a retro opportunity. But the drive-in movie theater, that's definitely something that, back in the heyday in the 50s and stuff like that, it was like a place to take your date because you got your car and privacy and all that stuff. So that was a thing back in the day.
Well, just think about it. You only have a view of the screen if you're in the front seat. If you're in the back seat, you got no view. So
you have to kind of lean forward and peek around.
And some people would put lawn chairs out next to the car, which that worked in the summer months. But in the wintertime, my parents I know took me to a drive-thru a couple times, but I don't remember anything. I think I was so little I couldn't even follow along.
Yeah, my memories are very vague, but Bambi and that Halloween double feature. Those are definitely the strongest memories of it.
Well, you think about it though, a drive-through works great when you have young kids. If you want to get to a movie, you just, if they're screaming in the back seat, it's not going to bother anyone else. So that's probably, drive-throughs were great for when your kids or you had babies, but you wanted to get out. You could just have the baby in the back seat or hold the baby in the front seat, watch a movie, but you're not bothering anybody if the baby starts crying.
Roll the window up. But it was hardly the high-tech, high-five viewing experience for sure. Had to throw that in there because that definitely was a part of the early days of going to movies. Did that a little more often than even going to the theater.
The Cinema West in Yakima, I saw Little Shop of Horrors. I talked about a little story about that in the musical show we did. And I saw Batman, the Tim Burton Batman for the first time. And I remember seeing Spaceballs just right before I went off to college. But some other theaters that I do remember, which were a big deal to me almost as much as the Yakima theaters, were really the ones in Wenatchee. Because all my dad's relatives, my grandparents and aunts and uncles all lived in Wenatchee. So we go to Wenatchee a lot. And a lot of times my aunt or uncle would take me to a movie. So we went to the Liberty Theater in downtown Wenatchee and the Columbia Cinema, which was in East Wenatchee. And it was the Liberty Theater where I saw Return of the Jedi for the first time. And I have a story about that. And I saw Popeye. I remember seeing that at the Liberty Theater, which I kind of have been joking that maybe we could do a review on Popeye. I'd kind of like to see that again. It is a musical with Robin Williams, and I don't remember a lot about it, except I remember he punches an octopus, and an octopus flies through the air, which is I expect it to be pretty cheesy, goofy. In East Wenatchee, I saw Back to the Future, which I was late to that movie with my date. I remember we were late. And we came in right where the woman is going, "Save the clock tower."
Oh, man. You missed a lot.
I missed a lot of that movie, and I still liked it. I remember I still thought it was awesome. So I've seen it many times since then. That's where I saw Aliens for the first time, which is a big deal. And that's where I saw a movie called Pale Rider. And Pale Rider with Clint Eastwood is not a memorable movie, but it was memorable to me because the first time I tried to put my arm around a girl. And this girl named Julie. She was a friend of mine. I met her. We were Senate pages, and I kept in touch with her. And whenever I come to Wenatchee, I'd get together with her and her friends, and I really liked her. She was a grade above me. And I remember we went to Pale Rider, and I spent the first half of that movie not paying attention because I was kept debating. Should I do it now? Should I do it now? Is this a good time? And I was really, really nervous. And I remember there was a shot where it was like the sunrise. I remember I kind of put my arm and I said, "So what do you think of the movie?" And I remember she slunk down in the chair. The ultimate denial of your attempt to put arms. So I'd worked up to that for such a long time. And by the time I got to it, clearly it was not well accepted.
Swing and a miss.
And as I learned later, she just wanted to be friends. But I always remember Pale Rider as the movie that the first half of it, I was just debating when should I make the move. And so that happened at the Columbia Cinema in East Wenatchee.
That's pretty funny. So that Pale Rider has a special significance now. You might watch that scene and remember, here's where I put my arm. You should watch it so you can just do a play-by-play. And right here's there's where I made my move.
Fortunately, it's not a good, it's not a happy memory because it wasn't success. It was really failure.
You're right. That's what I mean. It probably does not have a happy place as this fond memory. If it had gone well, you'd probably be like, Pale Rider is one of the greatest films of all time.
So I have a Return of the Jedi story, but Norb, did you want to share something?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely some times in there that, you mentioned Indiana Jones, and there was probably the best theater of all the ones that we've had in this area, bar none, was the South Center Mall Theater. And that was when it was a kind of circular building, one theater screen only movie. But why that was such a great movie is that it was where I saw every single Indiana Jones movie. And I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first time I really realized how great the sound was. And I don't know if it was just the mix on Raiders or if it was that theater and I just hadn't seen enough movies there or just hadn't seen enough high fidelity movies there. But Raiders was there, and that theater was special because it, again, one screen, so it was just the only show. But it had a curved screen. You don't see that very often, even now. I think Cinerama is the only one that's other in this Puget Sound area that has a curved screen. So it's super wide. I think it was compatible with the super, what's it called? What's the wide format?
CinemaScope?
CinemaScope. I think that actually had CinemaScope, capabilities, but it was really wide, it was curved, and the sound system, even by today's standards, I mean, they're all pretty good now, but that system rocked. And they had the stereo separation better than any other place. And so when in Indy, every time there was a loud moment, whether it was like the punch or a bullwhip crack or that opening gun fire when the guy tries to shoot Indy and Indy whips it. I mean, that scene was so loud. It was like deafening, but in a good way, And so you felt so immersed with the screen and the sound. And so every movie that you'd go to see at South Center Mall was just awesome. Or at South Center Mall Theater.
Did that have a balcony?
I don't think so. No, it just went way back. It didn't have theaterized. It was pre-theaterized. It was just a very slow sloping, long, deep round, but it did not have a balcony. I
don't know about you too, but I assume you wanted to sit towards the front. Not like the front, but front and middle. And I'd always look at people who sat in the way back and thought, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I never understood that. There's actually a funny thing with the sitting in the front. Because, nowadays, if you're picking the ideal seat, somewhere right in the middle is where you want to be.
Yeah.
Sweet spot, center, middle. Not, you
center,
don't be too
middle,
close,
slightly forward.
Not too back. Maybe just right there, 50%, 50-50, right middle. Well, it was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And it was this big event, obviously. Rob and we had, I think, his brother and his cousin Rick and some other people. We were all going down there. And we were in line. We had waited a long time for this. And Rick's kind of a crazy wild guy, so he was in the very front, and we went into the theater, and so we get first pick of any seat. So this is a dream to be the first one. So what does Rick do? He runs to the very front row. He goes to the front in the middle. He turns around. He goes, "Hey, Rob, look, front row."
No,
we're like, what are you doing? This isn't like a circus or a concert where you want to be in the front. No, the front's the worst place to go. Anyway, it's hilarious, and I don't think he went to as many movies as we did. He wasn't much savvy.
Clearly, he did not.
With the strategy of approaching him. It was so funny, so burned into my head of watching him sprint to the front, go to the very middle front seat, turning around. "Hey, Rob, look, front row." We were like,
clearly, this is a guy that went to rock concerts and not movies.
Yeah. That was so funny. We talk about it still to this day. Front row.
What was the movie?
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Okay, so Last Crusade.
87 or 89. I forget what year that came out. 87, I think. Anyway, so the South Center Theater. Every Indiana Jones movie. I mean, those are the ones I saw there. I don't remember if I saw this. I feel like I didn't see the Star Wars there. I feel like I saw the other Jedi movies, or the Empire and Jedi someplace else, but Indiana Jones, that was the place. That theater always had it, and it was wonderful viewings. So.
Well, the South Center Theater for me doesn't have a lot of memories. It does have one, and this was towards the tail end of its lifetime. But when I went to college, I went to Pacific Lutheran University, and there was a girl there that I got to know. Her name was Stacy. And I know you know who she is because you guys knew her brother.
Yeah.
Keep last names out of the show, but Stacy, for some reason, Stacy and I drove up. I think I was giving her a ride back to her house for the weekend, but we went up on a Friday and we went to the South Center Theater and saw Fatal Attraction.
Oh, yeah.
Stacy was really pretty and she was really cute. And I was pretty excited just, to have kind of a date like that where we went to see the movie. And I remember in the middle of Fatal Attraction where they're on the roller coaster, she reached over and grabbed my leg and I jumped because she knew that that was a pretty intense part. So she was clearly having fun with me. And that was cool. I think she kind of she was a little bit attracted to me and I was to her, but she was really pretty and I didn't know how to make a really good move on her.
You didn't grab her back?
Experience.
She should have grabbed you. I should have been your move to grab something of hers. But you didn't.
But she was, that was a fun date, but we went to the South Center Theater to see Fatal Attraction. And that may have been one of the few times I can remember being in there, but that was before it shut down.
No, you watched it in a good environment and got a leg grab out of it.
Yeah.
It's too bad you didn't take the clue and, make a move back.
And little did I know at the time, I was walking on hallowed ground of these these people that would eventually become my friends, who
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know
right.
at the
We didn't know
time,
each
but
other yet.
that was basically their entire childhood was in that theater.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you were still a newbie in the area and didn't know the history of what that theater would represent. Now it's a Bahama Breeze restaurant.
Yeah, it's been that for a while.
Yep.
So let me share my Return of the Jedi story. I think I may have shared this with you before, but this was when Return of the Jedi was coming out. Return of the Jedi made me angry at Mike Mercy. I was angry at this person who was running Mercy Theaters in Yakima. And the reason I had an intense anger for him is because anyone who was a Star Wars person knew Return of the Jedi was coming. And we knew the date it was coming out. And about a week before it released, I was looking in the newspaper to start to see the ads because I was excited. And there were no ads for Return of the Jedi. And I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And I was talking to a friend at school and he said, oh yeah, he said, Mercy decided to do second run. And I said, what the heck is second run? He said, well, basically what he found out is that if you show the movie a month after it comes out, you don't have to pay the movie studios as much money, so you can profit more. And at that point, I hated Mike Mercy because I was not going to be able to see Return of the Jedi because he wanted to make an extra buck off those of us in Yakima that had nowhere else to go. There weren't any competitive theater chains, so you went and saw a movie at Mercy Theaters and there was nothing else. And unless
you left the city limits, this is the only way you could see it somewhere else, right?
So the way I saw Return of the Jedi is we took a trip to Wenatchee. My parents drove us over and I got to see it at the Liberty Cinema Wenatchee. And I also remember this, and I brought this up with you guys. None of you remember this, but at the Liberty Theater, when we went to Return of the Jedi, they had on a piece of paper at the box office window, a note saying, due to Lucasfilm's costs at allowing us to show this movie, we apologize, but we have to have a surcharge of $1 per ticket. Basically, because it's Return of the Jedi and because everybody wants to see it, they're trying to maximize profits. So we had to pay an extra $1 a ticket just to see it. But we saw it. And of course, I was just glad to see it because my friends at school, we were all talking about, someone was saying, yeah, I'm going down to the Tri-Cities this weekend. My parents are taking me there. We're going to see it there. And so the hardcore people like me, we were all discussing where we were driving off to see it. And I remember just, again, thinking, Mercy is such a profiteering, greedy person that he's denying us the chance to see this in our own town. And I remember when he finally released it, people were lined up around the block to see it. And what I realized then is, you know what? Most people, they don't even know what the heck's going on.
Yeah,
to them, they open the paper and they go, hey, Return of the Jedi's playing. Let's go see it. And they have no idea that it started a month ago.
Unless they have sci-fi nerd kids who are pushing them to please, can we see it this weekend? They'll just wait till, oh, look, this is out.
It's like there's a group of people out there that they'll see a movie because it's the thing to do. But they're not necessarily seeing it because they can't wait to see it. They just feel like they should see it because everybody's seen it. And to them, they open the newspaper and see it's playing and think, oh, we should go. So that's my Return of the Jedi story. Big, big memory and frustration with Mr. Mercy at the time.
Yeah, that's
you guys didn't have those problems.
We didn't have those problems. I don't remember exactly how the Return of the Jedi viewing went. I remember coordinating with Jim, one of our friends, because I think we were trying to see it together. And I remember driving around, so I feel like there was like a craziness involved in trying to get to the theater, and whether it was because it was sold out or something. But I don't remember even where we saw it. It's weird that I don't remember where I saw the other two Star Wars movies. Well, I have a very distinct memory of the first one. But what I do remember, though, is another one of our favorite movie haunts is the SeaTac cinemas. Mostly, I remember that because we used to ride our bikes down there, and so that was actually fun to be able to do that. I think I recall I believe we saw Nightmare on Elm Street over there. But some of the funniest memories about some of those trips weren't even my own. They were actually some of the things that Rob would tell me that some of his friends did. His brother and our buddy Pat. I remember telling me about how Pat used to take his pocket knife out or switchblade or something, and he would like carve out in the back of the seats. Just
Nice.
very destructive. And then Dan, one time he went to the theater and he had this bottle of what they called pew farts. Basically canned stink fart smell in an aerosol. And they would go watch movies and they would pepper this stuff throughout the movies and intentionally stink out the audience. And people would be just, you could tell the reaction of people inside, as the waves of this smell would move across the theater. It's terrible. I never did that, never witnessed it, but I just thought there were some pretty funny things that people I knew anyway would used to do, and it didn't happen under my watch, but we were more well-behaved. We didn't do that kind of stuff, but those guys were pretty crazy.
So the end chapter to my Mike Mercy story is when in college, I was working in the summers in Yakima at the Town Plaza Motor Inn as a bellman. I told the story about how I used to have to play Presumed Innocent in the VCR at 8 o'clock every evening for people to watch in their rooms. And it was during that time I really wanted to be a filmmaker, and I was into movies, and the job as the bellman at the hotel was a good job. It paid well. And I remember my mom suggested, she said, why don't you go talk to Mike Mercy? Why don't you just call up and make an appointment with him and ask him if he could give you a job during the day, maybe working in his theaters. Maybe you could learn something about movies. And my mom was good at encouraging me to not be afraid to just call. So I called the Mercy Theater offices, and the secretary answered, and I said, I would like to make an appointment with Mr. Mercy. She said, and what would this be about? I said, I would like to talk to him about movies. And I remember, and nowadays, that's the point where you would get completely walled off, where they would say, he's too busy to talk to you. But she made an appointment. So I came down at 10 a.m., I think, on a Tuesday, and I waited outside his office, and then they called me in, and there was Mr. Mercy. I'd never met him, sitting at his desk. So he said, what can I do for you? And he was very nice, very nice. And first thing I said is, you ruined my Return of the Jedi. No, I didn't say that.
I was going to say that was the perfect time. Give a piece of your mind.
I was a little, meeting with Mr. Mercy. I was a little nervous, but I shook his hand and I said, so I'm a filmmaker. I really want to make movies. I've done stuff on the Community Access channel here, and I work at the Town Plaza. I was wondering during the day if I could get a job working in one of your theaters so I could learn more about movies. And I remember he's very nice. He says, well, Mike, let me explain to you. He says, my job is to really keep the bathrooms clean, make sure people have pop and popcorn. He said, that's what running the movie theater is all about. Unfortunately, I have nothing to do with making movies. He said, so I'm really sorry. I just don't think there's anything for you that I could give you that could help you with your filmmaking career. And he said, again, my job is to just make sure people have a good movie watching experience. And I remember during that call, his phone rang and he goes, hello. And he looks at me, he goes, it's my mom. He says, hi, Mom. And he said, can I call you back? And I was thinking, wow, his mom called him. And we finished our conversation, and that was that. So he did not offer me anything. And looking back, I thought maybe, even being a projectionist, that would have been a good experience. But I know that the job of a projectionist in the theater was not given to young 20-year-olds for the most part.
That's a pretty important job.
That was an important job. You had to, usually a higher up person working in the theater did that job. So
yeah, you can mess up popcorn, but you can't mess up that projection.
Yeah. Sadly,
big deal.
5 to 10 years after that, Mr. Mercy and his son died in a plane crash. They were flying. He had his own private plane he owned, and he was flying it from Seattle back to Yakima, and it crashed in the mountains. So it was a sad end to Mr. Mercy's life. And I guess looking back is I'm glad I got to meet him. I mean, I wasn't happy about Return of the Jedi, but he provided some great theaters, and that gave me a lot of good memories of seeing a lot of important films in my life growing up. So,
man, you didn't really have much of a choice, but I guess since his name was on the theaters, you
yep,
tribute where it's deserved. Well, that's cool. Well, so the next one you kind of mentioned off the top, but the time at Kent 6 Cinemas was a special time because Rob's sister Marcia was manager there. I can't remember how long it was. It seemed like a nice long, it wasn't long enough, but it was a nice enough time that what was great about it was Rob in particular, but I got to take advantage once in a while, was we got free access to movies and some treats during a very special time. It's not very often you have someone who's a manager in the theater working, who's
you lucky person, you.
So there was a time when we got to see a lot of stuff and we didn't have to spend a whole lot of money. So I remember sneaking into movies. We would just bounce around. Sometimes we'd only see parts of movies and see other movies more than once, but Rob got a lot. He just kind of clean up a little bit here and there, but I got to go sneak in and watch a little bit of Purple Rain. I remember this one particular time we snuck in and watched 48 Hours and Flashdance. It was kind of like a back-to-back thing, so we watched those two movies. There were other ones. I think Karate Kid was in there, and even Raiders played at the time. And I remember one of the biggest disappointments and one of the biggest realizations I had that not all theaters are made equal was after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark at South Center and then seeing it again. This is probably my sixth time in the theater to watch Raiders. We watched it with my family at Kent 6. And I was waiting for that first punch sound when
Marion
punches Indy. I need one of the pieces your father collected. And it's so loud and booming in South Center. I was waiting for it. Like, here it comes. My family's going to love how the sound of this is. And it was like, I need one of the pieces your father collected. It's like, oh, what? What is this? So clearly the sound quality differed immensely from one theater to the next. It was a sudden shock of realization. That was my benchmark. I knew exactly what it was supposed to sound like, and it didn't. So I also knew that watching movies at Kent 6 was not quite the same Dolby stereo quality that I was getting at South Center. But
free.
Hey, when you're seeing for free, who's going to argue? So that was a great time to be able to go in and out of movies. This is during the junior high period, and sneak in and stuff. That was a great time.
Boy, I've said this to Rob. You guys are so darn lucky you got to do that. I mean, that is like a dream. You were living a dream, being able to bike to a movie theater and then get in for free and get free popcorn and soda and just watch movies all day. I can't believe how lucky you are that you got to do that. And this is someone who was so far from that, being able to do anything like that.
Yeah, you had less choices. You relied on somebody to let you go. Yeah, it was a pretty sweet deal. Sweet deal. I remember watching Hellraiser in there. That was one of those movies that I was like, this isn't all that great. Let's watch something else. Let's hop over to the other screen. But yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Well, the one story I wanted to share, and this is really a big thank you to my mom, because I obviously loved movies and was so desperate to see a movie when it came out. And when Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out, the weekend it was releasing, we were going to be in Chehalis, Washington, visiting my grandma. And I was in tune of when things were coming. And I remember bugging my parents saying, is there a way we can see it when we're in Chehalis? Because I really want to see it. I've been dying for this movie. I mean, ever since Raiders of the Lost Ark, I just was counting days until I could see a sequel. And I'd seen the trailer. I wanted to see it badly. And so my mom took me. And I had heard through friends at school that he rips someone gets their heart ripped out. That's what I just heard. That it was ultra violent and that someone gets their heart ripped out. And I knew that was it. And I thought, I know my mom, this is not kind of her thing, but I didn't say anything. And so we went. And I remember we're in line in the concession stand, and it's just, you feel like the whole town's at the theater. And they were even selling the novel version of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom on the countertops at the concession stand in case. I remember some friend of my grandma's picked it up and he goes, hey, maybe I should just read it to you now. And then, everybody in the concessionary started chuckling, and joke at the time. So we went in and saw it. I remember the part where he gets his heart ripped out. And I remember I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, remember, it's just a movie. I was more worried about my mom being unhappy with that than me. I think part of it is just, I was always afraid that if she didn't like something, she might say, we're leaving. Or, you can't watch that music video. It was always that. So I was doing everything I could to let her know I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm all right. No, I'm all right.
Was it your whole family? Was it your whole family?
No, it's just Mom and I.
Just
I don't know why.
Wow.
I don't know why my dad didn't go. Maybe he had to stay home with my sister. It was probably that, because my sister couldn't go. She was too young, and they probably didn't want to leave her with my grandparents. So my guess is my dad stayed home with my sister. So my mom took me. So Mom, thank you. Thank you for taking me to that, because I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was really because of all my anticipation of films, that was one of my biggest ever. So
it's so funny how you and I, we had, growing up, our childhoods were so different from what we watched at home, our video game playing. You obviously had a lot more restrictions on what you had to do. I remember even watching Raiders for the first time. Everything about all those things were always involved friends. And I remember it was when we saw Raiders for the first time in South Center. It was a birthday party. Gosh, was it my birthday? I can't remember. It was somebody's birthday. Was it Rob's birthday? I can't remember whose birthday it was. It was somebody's birthday. But I remember we were going to stay and watch Raiders like multiple times and just keep staying in the theater. We watched it 1 3/4 times. And the reason I had to leave early was because I had football practice that afternoon.
Oh.
And so we only got to watch it all the way through once and then watched it to the truck chase. And then I had to spoil it for everybody else. We had to all go. I think because it was one of those things a parent had to pick all of us up at the same time.
Sucks.
So I was like, everybody wanted to stay for like multiple times. I gotta go to football practice, guys. So we had to stop at 1 3/4. And I remember being so bummed because I wanted to just keep watching it over and over again. I eventually did. Like I said, I think I watched it 5 or 6 times in the theater. But that first time was fun with just a bunch of fellas and Rob and probably Brian, Wim, and Pat, and who knows who else was there. But it's funny, I didn't watch most of the movies I seen earlier on. It was always with my parents, but once it got to be like 80s on, I felt like most of the movies I watched, my parents weren't usually involved, unless it was a movie we wanted to go see together. And usually anytime it's these other kinds, there'd just be, we'd find some way, either my sister would drive us or our aunt would drive us or my parents would drop us off or someone else's would. But it was convenient because it was all close by, so that worked out well. But
yeah, it was a combination of that. I had to have a ride to the theater, but other than that, most of my friends were not into the same movies as me. They were into sports movies. They just weren't into the fantasy action like me. There were kids at school I chatted about, but they weren't like my best friends. And so I ended up seeing a lot of movies with my folks just because they would take me. Occasionally there was one friend in the neighborhood that sometimes his mom would drive us. And so I remember I saw Empire Strikes Back with him. His name is Matt. And so there's a couple times, but I didn't have the network like you did. You guys had your own network.
I consider myself lucky, and still that network is intact today. But it's like if you watch the movie, if you watch Stranger Things or Super 8, that group of kids, they're all kind of a little bit nerdy. They do a lot of kind of goofball stuff together. That was us. That was what we did. And, we did the filmmaking side. And so we had, in our core group, we all liked the same things. And whether it was making movies, playing certain video games, watching horror films, we had that collective. And so if it wasn't somebody else's parents, there's always another friend who usually we could turn to who had someone who had means to transportation or something that could get us to somewhere and pick us back up. That or else lenient parents. So it was nice that we had that ability because, like I said, most of my memories are always with someone else in the shared experience and talking about it. And it wasn't my parents because we probably wouldn't have had that discussion. We wouldn't have that deep discussion about these things that we love so much, and it was great to be able to have these the shared experiences, which I know you got to have later on once we all became roommates. But if you've been around our neighborhood, and I always say this, like you and Dino, who all became good friends with later, if you'd been around our circle back then, I know we would have all been doing the same stuff because that was where our true passions and hobbies and enjoyments all were aligned. Eventually came out to be. It just took many more years later. But yep, those were fun times.
Well, I have one last little section, and really my section of my Seattle theaters. So eventually I went to PLU and then UW, and I saw there used to be a theater in Bellevue called John Dan's, and it had a balcony. I remember it was huge. It was my first dose of the big city life. You go to see a movie at John Dan's Theater. I saw Platoon and I saw The Golden Child. And I just remember being overwhelmed by how gigantic these theaters were compared to the ones in Yakima and Wenatchee and Chehalis. And so John Dan's was really my first big ever theater experience. And then eventually I made it to Northgate for a couple things in South Center, like I said, but John Dan's was it. But really, I was thinking, the theater with the most memories in the Seattle area for me would definitely be Oak Tree Cinemas.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of movies there with you and Rob, and I saw them before I knew you. I went there to see a lot of movies when I was living in Seattle. But Oak Tree would be my Seattle cinema with the most memories. I don't know about you. But,
well, I have a whole section that's kind of the whole Seattle and North End sections. But Oak Tree definitely. There was like 4 theaters that we always went to. There was Oak Tree, that was the closest, and then there was Northgate, but Northgate only had one screen, so you had to kind of only see certain movies there. And then if you went further up, there was the Montlake 9, and then the one way up there with the really cool seats at the time was the Alderwood.
Alderwood was the best.
Alderwood had these red seats that. Really, I think by nature now, obviously we have now the ones that slide all the way back. You can't compare to what we have now. But then they were cool. They were these red seats, and they looked almost like sports car seats.
They were like couch chairs.
Yeah, but they really kind of leaned back. They were pretty cool. And I just remember the stark red. It was very, very theater-like. Matches like a red carpet red would be. But yeah, I remember my Oak Tree experience early on was going to Die Hard.
That's where I saw Die Hard too.
Yep.
First time I saw it was there.
Again, when there's those few movies that just change your perspective on cinema, there was Life Before Die Hard and then Life After, and it's hard to forget the movie theater you were at, but I remember going to that one. That was 1988, I believe. But yeah, that was early on. And one thing about Oak Tree, what was special about that theater more than the other ones is that there was a lot of neon. A lot of neon lights. Remember that in the lobby?
Yes.
They had all kinds of neon light fixtures and colors and stuff. And that's the first thing I remember. You would pull up to it, and it's just this glowing, one of the brightest theaters I'd ever seen. It was because of all that neon light that they had in there. Neon lights is kind of a gone thing now. Everyone's using LED lights for everything. Neon is probably expensive. It's probably...
They have them at the Issaquah Highlands Theater. They have a nice front there with the Regal.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. It just feels like neon was a big thing back in the day. It feels like less and less are using neon nowadays because I do believe it's not very cost effective.
Well, they had neon inside the theater too, just lining the walls.
Yes. Right. Yeah. It was just a theme throughout, which I thought was really cool. I got to bring up another theater that has some kind of cool memories. I'll do it quick. But the Lewis and Clark Theater, that was another one of those ones that was kind of in our realm, close in the Kent area. But one particular memory I remember with Rob, I think Rob met me there, and I think I might have had my girlfriend at the time for a movie. I don't remember what it was, but I remember Rob came from, I think, a soccer practice. He was all thirsty and hot and everything, so he got a big thing of popcorn, big drink, and this is before the days of cup holders, right? So I remember he joined us, he got all settled in, and we're just kind of getting your positions and everything, and thought to, right after getting settled in, no cup holders, so all the food's always on your feet, right? And then I hear Rob's foot kind of shifts, and then you hear this, his extra large soda had tipped over, the lid came off, and the showering flood of carbonated syrup soda was just sliding down the floor ahead. So it's just like this big mess of stuff. You can just see it all, or you hear it going all the way down. But also to think that Rob just spent like $6, $7, $8 or whatever at the time on this drink. He probably could have gone back and got a refill, but I think at the time he felt like, oh no, I just spilled $5 worth of goodies.
That sucks.
That was hilarious though. Just the sound of carbonation.
And then it's flowing downhill to other people's shoes.
Other shoes and popcorn that they have. Maybe a purse that's on the floor there.
It was the same thing. Sometimes you'd hear a beer bottle get kicked over, and then you'd hear it roll all the way down.
And you knew somebody brought that in illegally because everything they have is all the paper products. So that was a pretty funny memory of going to that place. I remember there was another thing I remember about the Lewis and Clark. I wasn't there for this, but I remember Prince. I went to go see Prince in concert at the Coliseum. Great show. One of the first concerts I've seen of Prince. And afterwards, I'd heard he went down to the Lewis and Clark Theater, and basically him and his entourage like rented it out I kicked everybody out and just basically said, I'm going to rent the theater and watch some movie or something. And I think a guy named Bob who worked at Kent 6 with Marcia, he was like the projectionist. I think he was now manager of that theater. I think if I got my facts correct. Anyway, he didn't like Prince, but he had to deal with it, and set this whole thing up. But he had apparently, when he worked at Kent 6 and Purple Rain was playing there, he had taken one frame out of the movie, which was out of the actual film print, clipped out a film piece of Prince where he had this vision of himself hanging himself in Purple Rain. So there's a shot of him with a noose around his neck hanging, and he apparently took that frame out and then blew it up and made like an enlargement of Prince hanging by his neck because he didn't like the guy. So he literally cut a piece out of the film just for his own personal glory. It's deep. Anyway, then he had to go cater to him renting his theater on kicking everybody else out for the night after his show. So crazy stuff. That was Lewis and Clark Theater. But,
well, that was where we saw Jurassic Park 3.
Yeah.
That moment where the sound came on and we could tell it wasn't loud enough. And I'm thinking, this is not loud enough. And you just hopped right up and headed to the back. I knew where you were going to say to the manager, turn the volume knob to the right.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing worse than a movie. Usually you go to a movie theater, there's usually not a lot of problems. It's pretty set. Yeah. I remember we were all hyped up. We had high expectations. And as soon as the opening logo came on, it was like looking around and I'm thinking, does anybody notice this? This sounds way too quiet. And I was like, I'm not going to let my experience of this movie be ruined by bad sound. So I ran up and found the usher. I think they did eventually fix it pretty quickly. But yeah, that was.
So what I also remember about that movie experience, and I bet you don't remember this, is that was during the summer that Titanic was supposed to come out. But it was delayed because of all the production problems.
Yeah.
But they had Titanic popcorn tubs and drink cups.
Remember. Okay.
So when we were at the movie, we're having our popcorn tubs in Titanic. It's got a picture of the ship. And the joke is that was supposed to be because the movie was out. But they'd already made all the stuff for it. So they're serving popcorn in Titanic tubs. But all everyone's talking about is Titanic's delayed. And they're having all kinds of problems. That's all we knew. Delayed, problems, didn't make it for its summer release. So it came out at Christmas time instead.
Yeah, which we saw quite a few times. But if I recall,
though, it was delayed because it was a tough movie to make, but boy, they were making a masterpiece.
Yeah, it was turned out to be one of the best movies ever. But I remember also that same time we had the Jurassic Park fiasco with the sound. I think Pat, another Pat, my buddy who I go to the Seahawks games with, I think Pat was with the group. And I remember he was messing around with somebody, when you're waiting for the movie to start, you're all sitting in your chairs. And he was doing something where he was like messing around with somebody's popcorn thing. And he ended up spilling probably one of those Titanic boxes and dumped it. And so somebody was pissed. I can't remember who it was who was a victim of Pat's teasing with the popcorn, but I remember Pat dumped practically his entire Titanic box of popcorn out.
Was that the moment where someone said, get your own funky popcorn?
No, that was different. That was a different time when Dino, Rob, I think Rob or you or somebody wanted to, hey, Dino, you want to go in on some popcorn? He's like, oh man, go get your own funky popcorn. He wanted his own container to himself. He didn't want to share. He must have been pretty hungry that day. Yep, get your own funky popcorn.
Well, the Montlake 9 we liked going there because it was new. It was one of the newer theaters, so it was just fun to go to a theater that was new, construction, new, it was clean inside. But that was where I met Rob for the first time, who's I know had become one of my best friends. We went to see Stargate. And that's where Rob, you said, Rob's going to meet us there. And I thought, meet Rob.
Wow, I didn't realize that was the first time. That's wild.
First time I met Rob, saw Stargate together.
So. Okay. Wild. I remember what I remember most about Stargate was noticing all of the reflections of crew and cameras and tripods and light reflectors in those glasses when they were in this kind of desert scene. The movie was pretty forgettable. I remember being kind of disappointed if I recall, but
it started out good.
It started like most movies do. First act usually always sets up well. It's always how it finishes that leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah,
but so I had a couple of memories. You kind of touched on it already when it comes to another theater nearby. We had a lot of theaters nearby. There was the Renton Cinemas, and that's the one where, as you mentioned before, we went to go see the test screening, not the premiere of Judge Dredd. And me and Rob were late, so we ended up seeing Casper. I don't know why we were late. I just remember being in the parking lot, and we were trying to figure out what to do because we couldn't get in. Maybe we went back to the car or something. But I remember you guys were in there, and then someone came out of the side entrance, and Rob, who's always the king of seeing people's faces and recognizing who they are, you're like, oh my God, that's Stallone right there. Like, what? And he walks out, he had like a black t-shirt, and there was 2 other guys with him, probably his bodyguards or entourage or something. But yeah, he walked out of the theater. It was like, it was him. They got into some kind of like black SUV or something like that. But literally it was like Stallone had come to here, and I think it might have been because he might have been shooting another movie, that Antonio Banderas movie. Some kind of cop. Assassins. Yeah, I think he was here, and that's why. Because like, why the hell would Sylvester Stallone come to Renton?
Yeah, they were shooting Assassins at the time.
They were shooting Assassins.
That's why they did the test screening here, because they were filming Assassins.
So
they're making it convenient for him. It all made sense.
So they were shooting. That was back in the heyday when they're still making movies in Seattle. But yeah, so they were making Assassins, and yeah, we got to see Stallone come out of little old Renton cinemas. Watching his test
I think is funny about that story is, to this day, you have never discussed the movie Casper, ever. Which means it must have been really forgettable.
I remember some things. And yeah, it was, there's not much to tell. I don't think it was a horrible movie. It was just, it must have been sad that was the only option we had left to go see. Yeah. It must have been, at that time frame, it was probably like, that movie's not going to start till like 1 something, and that's not for like an hour and a half, and just had to, 2 for Casper. I really don't remember anything from it. I kind of remember what the ghost looked like, and I think the girl was the one from Addams Family or something. Actually, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I got to interject this other story real quick before I forget it, but I'm trying to remember what theater, but it was a famous moment now famous, that Rob and Norb and I went and saw Super 8. And I think it was at South Center or Kent Station, it might have been, but that was a moment made famous where during most of Super 8, Norb was sleeping. And at the end of it, we gave him a bunch of crap about falling asleep, and he goes, I got the gist. And that's now become famous that if you go to a movie and sleep through it, it's okay, because you get the gist.
Yeah, you don't have to sleep through it. If you just nod off at times and get caught nodding, like, hey man, I saw you were nodding off. It's okay, I got the gist.
In other words, getting the gist means, I saw enough of it.
You know what's funny though is actually I did watch the whole movie in its entirety later, and I really did get the gist. I didn't really miss much. I was fine. I blinked. I had long blinks at just the right part. I have to mention this. This is really an off theater experience, but I was in Vancouver, BC, and I went to a movie with this gal named Mary Ann. We weren't involved or anything, although I did kind of thought she was kind of cute at the time. But I was up there for, I think it was doing some modeling related stuff. But I went up there and we went to go see one of those type of documentary things you'd see at like the IMAX theater at the Boeing IMAX or at the Seattle Science Center. It's more like a 30-minute show.
There was a while where we were going to the Boeing IMAX theater a lot.
Yeah.
We would always make a trip down there because it was cool.
Yeah, it wasn't very often, or did they do movies? I mean, it seemed like they showed a lot of kind of specialty movies. But then
they started showing features. That's where they showed the Polar Express.
Yeah. But prior to that, they would usually show these sort of nature shows or something pertaining to
Cyber World.
Yeah, documentary shorts, not full features. But I remember one of the coolest things, we've seen a lot of 3D. It's kind of come its way. I don't know, it seems like a passing fad now. But one of the coolest uses of 3D that I'd never seen done again was they showed a scene where you had the 3D glasses on, and they took this helicopter scene where you had the camera flying from the sky into a canyon where there's like a river and people boating and rafting down below. And so they showed it regular, what it would look like if you're just a person in a floating thing going down. I thought, okay, that's cool, 3D, haha. And then they did it, what would it look like if you were the size of a bird, like a small animal where your eyes are closer together? And they just put the lenses together, and all of a sudden you felt like everything was bigger. Like, whoa, you really get that sense of what it would be like to be small. And then did another one. They said, well, this is what it would look like if you're like a giant, dragon or something with a big head with your 2 eyes far apart. And all of a sudden everything felt like you're looking at a little model. And that was really cool. I'd never seen 3D used that way because whenever we watch 3D, you always watch it from the human experience. You always look at it from our normal eyes perspective. And that was one of the few times I wish I knew what that show was because I'd love to see that again for that effect. But you have to watch it in 3D, obviously.
Well, that's a big thing when they were shooting 3D movies. They talked about ocular distance, about how far would they have the lenses from each other to simulate your eyes. Yeah. That was a big deal.
Yeah, because you have to determine what's the view, and obviously humans have a certain range. But if you make that wide apart, it would be like what it would look like if you were a monster, a giant thing. So that's something that was pretty cool.
That's interesting. I didn't know. I wish I'd have seen that. That would have been pretty cool.
It is one of the only times I've ever seen it demonstrated that way, and I don't even know what it's called. It was just some kind of secrets of blah 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 nature. Some documentary you'd see in some science center somewhere.
Well, that's the thing. It seemed like in the late 90s, early 2000s that there was IMAX was huge. There was always IMAX movies playing, and you always had to go see it at the Boeing IMAX.
Space
now every theater has an IMAX screen, and it's kind of
not as big.
Special.
They're not as big as the IMAX that they had. I mean, that IMAX theater when it first came out,
it's kind of misleading.
Yeah, it really was. It's like half IMAX.
It is.
Because the real IMAX, that was huge. I mean, it really was like 2 stories tall or whatever. It was not like your typical thing.
Don't you remember we'd always go to the Boeing IMAX and you'd sit there and the first thing they play, you hear this voice say, the IMAX screen is 2 stories tall. And you'd hear this voice in the back corner say, wow, that's big. You remember that? It was the surround sound voice. Yep. Wow, that's big. Mm-hmm. All part of the IMAX intro.
Yep. So IMAX is not what it used to be. It's like baby IMAX.
As Wayne would say, they sold out.
Yeah.
Well, that's most of my good stories. I'm content with what I got to share. Did you have anything left?
Well, I guess I have to just add one more thing. I would talk about Frayed, our movie that we made. We talked about during the horror our review on the horror documentary, but we are going to do a more specific mention about Frayed because there's so many facets to Frayed before it was shot, during the shooting, post-production, and then just getting it screened and all that stuff. And we have some experiences about all the film festivals we went to and watching it with an audience, which is a dream come true when you get that opportunity. But not enough time to talk about it here, but I did want to mention about was, for me, I got that second dose of watching a movie in the theater, and that was when I had my norb-cam, my YouTube channel documentary, norb-cam, The View from a 12, after the 2014 season. And it was really the first year where I really kind of ramped it up with Rivals videos, where you were part of that, music videos. And so it was like the first year of like the major production. And of course that year I went to the Super Bowl 49 and lost, so it ended on a downer note. But I ended up making a documentary that was basically like a culmination of the entire season from all these different pieces put together in sort of like one season of football through my perspective, through all these blogs, game reactions and everything like that. And what was fun about that was making it just to take all this material and put it all together in one kind of continuous flow. But we actually showed it in the theater, in the Valley Cinemas, which is no longer, sadly. They turned into a car dealership. And we got to screen it in the actual theater with an audience, and it was great. I mean, it was a pretty full crowd, and we did it again actually in Wenatchee, and did a road trip, and did it a second time in the Wenatchee, a little smaller venue, but nonetheless fun to share with the crowd. And that was great. It was one of those things where we have so few opportunities to watch our work with an audience. It's hard enough to watch with a small group, less to see our work in a theater. But to have had that opportunity twice in my life, once with Frayed, and then again with norb-cam, A View from the 12. That there's nothing better. There's nothing more sort of tantalizing. And when the lights go dark and it's about to start, you get excited about movies in general. But when it's your movie, man, the excitement level, the stress, just wanting everything to be perfect and hope that the sound is good and everything is right. You're just always. It's one of those highs that you just never. You can never get enough of. And we're fortunate to have at least had a few opportunities to do that. So that was in the theater that unfortunately has no longer existed, but I have that special memory. One of the last final memories of going to that theater was getting to show my movie there. So that was pretty fun.
There's more and more talk these days of is our theaters going to go away? Are all movies just going to be released at home? And boy, I hope not. I mean, I'm a big theater supporter. I think it's important to see a movie on the big screen with other people. Even if sometimes those other people might bug you a little bit, it's still worth it for me. So I sure hope movie theaters are here to stay for many, many years to come. I will be a big supporter, and I will keep going.
As we know, physical media, which you're a big proponent of, has been going away, but hopefully the theater experience does not, because there's just something fun about having that plan of picking out a movie and then taking it, whether it's a date or friends or your kids or whatever, and just there's something fun about going into the building, and you're paying for overpriced popcorn and drinks and stuff like that, and you could watch it at home on a pretty good sound system with a pretty big screen these days on 4K streaming and all that, but there's just still something fun about going out and seeing the lights dim and watching the trailers beforehand. I love the trailers. I love all that stuff. A lot of people hate, it's too long, and this stuff, it's all these commercials. I actually love all that. I actually feel like I'm getting more of my money's worth when I'm there for a longer time than if I'm watching a movie that's only 80 minutes long. I'd actually like to be in the theater for 3 hours if the movie's good.
Well, the Stubbs A-list program at AMC is a great deal. I mean, that's where I go is AMC. I'm not. They didn't pay me to endorse them. They have offered the best deal for your dollar to see 3 movies a week, no restrictions on 3D or any type of IMAX. And
Baby IMAX.
Regal tried to come out with their program, and the first thing you see with Regal is that you have to pay surcharges on IMAX or RPX.
Right.
And that's just pathetic. I can't believe they didn't just match AMC. So I'm sticking with AMC, and I think it's been a great program, and it's allowed me to see more movies, and it's made my dollar stretch really well. So if they can make it, it means it works. So I just hope that people will keep going. The movie theater has always been my second home for my life, and I will continue to make it that. And my kids are very used to me dragging to the theater. So we go all the time.
We love it too, and I wish we could utilize it more. And it's just sad right now we're not going at all because theaters haven't opened, but they will. I guess word is they're going to be open in about a month from the time of this recording. So we're looking forward to that day. I don't know what will be playing because everything's kind of been on a weird hold, and movies that were going to come out didn't come out. So maybe they'll have some cool movies that are coming out. But there are some that I'm really looking forward to, and I can't wait to go out and be able to watch them.
They're probably going to invent that mask that you wear in the theater that has 2 little snaps that just opens up a little flap just to roll your mouth. So you can then wear your mask and still shove popcorn in your mouth at the same time.
That'll be the challenge. But I'm looking forward to the day when that comes back. So, movie theater memories.
Hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane.
Yes, I know. We didn't. I do hope you enjoyed our memories. I know it's a lot of just us and reminiscing about our childhood, but these are the memories we hope that you guys will get to have in the future, and that they'll continue to be, because they are some of the fondest memories I have. And the thought of there not being theaters around to have those memories would be a very sad world, I would think, if that went away altogether. So we need places like that to congregate and have fun and talk about and be in the lobby afterwards talking about the movie you just saw. And you can't do that when you're just watching at home all the time. So, yes.
And the movie theater does force you, the talkers out there, that they can't talk, even though a few of them try.
Right. Afterwards. Talk afterwards. That's a good time to do it. All right, Mike, you got a surprise on this one?
No surprise. The surprise was the memories. I don't have anything physical or tangible of those old theaters I went to. So I can only just talk about it.
It's too bad we didn't have like an old movie ticket stub from a really cool movie or something. You probably know you do have some of those, but well, hopefully future cool movies to be seen, and have to remember to hold on to those really cool movie stubs for those movies that changed your life, because again, I do have a reel of film. I should have brought that. It's in the other room, but Jared gave it to me. That's right.
It's the trailer for The Running Man, but I'll save it for another show. It's an actual 35 millimeter film. So.
All right. Well, that wraps up our review of, not really review, but our walk down memory lane talking about our movie theater memories. Again, thank you for watching on YouTube, all of you who are out there. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on this video. It helps us out a lot. And hit that notification bell so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. And for everybody listening on podcast, thank you for your support. We hope you'll continue to listen, and please tell other people about us and send us a message, comment, email, whatever. Let us know what you think, and if you have other ideas of what you'd like to hear us talk about on our show. I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for watching The Watchmen.
Please click on here to watch other episodes, and be sure to hit that like button too.
And please subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll always be alerted to any future episodes.
It really helps us out, and we appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. And remember, we'll be watching.